In a studio, Jubilee and NASA. Interesting times ahead is one way I can describe it, because they both faced some opposition in rival strongholds yesterday. If we have some time, we'll just revisit some of the stories that we did. But let me bring in Brian Mutie into this. He was speaking before we took the break, and I'm to give you another 30 seconds just to bring a new point before we carry on with this discussion.
Absolutely. Thank you, Wahiga. What I was saying is actually, apart from the Mtuwetu politics that people are gravitating away from, we also have a scenario where, if you look at the margin of win for Jubilee against the so-called court by then, I think it was so small that now the NASA fraternity has realized that with some inroads in what are perceived to be Jubilee's strongholds, they can make a kill. They can actually, you know, amass some few votes here and there, and perhaps add to their basket, and vice versa. But again, when you see Jubilee going to Nyanza, or Luo Nyanza for that matter, they are not there to just win or to make a kill out of it, but they are just there to destabilize things a little bit, get some few votes, and then reach their baskets. When Uhuru goes to Kambani, of course, he's not there to make an outright win over Kalonzo in terms of voting patterns and all that, or basket. Is there just to pick some few votes and reach into already his perceived solidified base, and ensure that he has a competitive edge. And therefore, if you look at the margin that Jubilee won, I think Jubilee has realized that it's a vulnerable margin. It has to be protected. By way of protecting this is to ensure that they make some inroads in the perceived NASA strongholds, and ensure that at least they gain something and have that competitive edge over their opponent.
Daisy, apart from what we saw yesterday, what is your assessment of our democracy as we speak? Because some would say that if you can isolate what happened yesterday, as a democracy, we are moving forward. People are now scrutinizing manifestos. You are seeing rebellion in what was considered to be previously strongholds of a particular party as well. Isn't that a sign that we are maturing as a democracy?
Well, it was a sign of maturity, but what we saw yesterday is a situation that can actually take us into regression. And I think that people need to be concerned about that kind of behavior that we saw manifested yesterday, because if we now have an eye for an eye happening, remember that all the political parties, Jubilee has candidates in Kisumu who will be vying on their ticket. If this kind of hostility and intolerance is encouraged, then we are going to see the level of intolerance that we saw, where people's houses are being burnt, where people are being run out of town, where people are being physically assaulted, simply because now you are representing the party that has now been deemed hostile in this area, or because our candidate has been subjected to certain hostilities in this candidate stronghold. So it is the kind of politics that must be discouraged, because aside from having candidates of the apparently unwelcome parties, remember we also have independent candidates. Okay, so if we are going to start encouraging political parties or supporters of political parties to begin to block or zone their areas with hostilities, then we are igniting a fire that can only degenerate into a blazing Kenya. And as Brian has said, you know, one of the dynamics that we have right now, which makes the elections all up in the air, is also the devolution. And if you saw from the nomination exercise, people have become more and more aware. We have seen counties where entire leadership was voted out. Governor, members of the county assembly, members of parliament. We saw it in Nandi, we've seen it in Baringo, where people have voted them out because they were completely dissatisfied with their performance, and they are ready to bring in new people. We have also seen party leaders being heckled when they are advocating for six-piece voting, where the president is told, you ask for your vote, but the local vote you leave us to decide the way we are going to vote. And the same thing with the opposition leader, Raila Odinga, in his areas. So dynamics are changing. So if we begin to encourage the zoning and zoning using violence of what are perceived strongholds, at what point are we going to stop? Because that is national level zoning, where the national leadership is beginning to zone its political parties. What happens if the incumbents within the counties begin to zone the same way? Are we not going to then encourage 47 theaters of violence? And how do we stop that, you know, from getting out of hand? So the police and all the agencies that are tasked with the responsibility of reining in electoral violence, including the violence that is meted out during campaigns must act swiftly to nip this in the bud, and Kenyans must refuse to be co-opted into this kind of strategy. It is a bad strategy, it is a dangerous strategy, and you cannot ignite a fire thinking that you will be able to control how it burns and who it burns, because you may start by burning your neighbor's house and find that you have burnt your house also. So I think it must be discouraged, and also, of course, for me, when I talk about it as women, remember that it also has the effect of voter suppression, because when you have violence, people are not going to come out and vote. So it also has the effect of suppressing voter turnout in certain areas. So it will distort the outcome. So it's just a bad strategy.
Although there has been a school of thought that for some, suppressing voter turnout is part of their strategy, but that's a topic.
Yes, but that's a bad strategy, and it must not be encouraged. People need to use, people must tell their policies and let people decide. People should not, remember that one of the principles of the electoral process is that people should be allowed to campaign,
that's right,
and they're free from intimidation, violence, or the threat of violence. So it falls foul of every principle, constitutional principle. It falls foul of our laws. It must not be encouraged. These are strategies that were used before. The reason we promulgated a new constitution is to discourage this kind of politics in Kenya. And politicians must remember that this country belongs to all of us. They cannot burn Kenya expecting that they will control how the fires will go.
Gabriel, if we are to buy into Dunstan's narrative that politicians are up to their old tricks again, the question is the voter the same voter we had in 2007 and in 2013? Or has the voter changed? Well, they buy into that narrative as they may have done in the past?
I'm a firm believer that democracy, only suffices when the voter is informed. And I'm among the few people who actually thought we were heading in the right direction. If you may recall, in 2013, we had in Lower Eastern, we had actually two legislators from ODM who actually were elected. Just the other day in Kahawa and Dani, you saw Aluo, who's nicknamed Gearbox, being elected on a Jubilee ticket. And I would have thought we were actually heading in the right direction. So I'll agree to an extent with what Dunstan is saying. The politicians have just sat back and realized, hang on a minute, I think the voter is playing us here. In this regard, they are not listening to our words anymore, but they've gotten now deep core into the manifestos. Now, these manifestos are not really, in any way, shape, or form, meant to guide. But they are supposed to just, plaster them on the wall, let them read, but as they read, we do our shenanigans. But it seems like, what Daisy has said, the voter is starting to ask questions. And as they are asking questions, the politicians are finding themselves kind of, getting sidelined. And that's why I started by, talking about somebody who I thought was a very serious candidate. Not only serious, but somebody who would have expected to think afresh, to bring new ideas, to inject an element of sobriety. But yet when they hold the microphone, a senator, a young senator like Kajwang, would say so-and-so is not welcome in my backyard. That is retrogressive thinking. And that's why I think, I would agree with what Dunstan is saying, the politicians are back to it. They are starting to ask, hang on a minute, if these people continue to think, informed, if you may recall, that's how I started, then we are going to be between a rock and a hard place. So, who is supposed to be fooling who? I think Wanjiku needs to be informed to such an extent where they are warning the principals and telling them, not really warning them, where they are telling them. On that seat above there, we can guarantee you will give you our votes. But when it comes to these other seats, the governor, the seats of, of the other leadership seats, allow us at the very least to make our choices. If we go in that parade, I think we'll start getting things right. But
who bears the greatest responsibility for educating Wanjiku?
You see, I think like we started, we have, we have institutions that are mandated to do that. But that still will not cut the cloth into the size of what I would call the moral fabric for this nation. Reason being, even the voter themselves, Wanjiku herself, she has a responsibility and a role to play. And that is to question the kind of leadership you know, that are coming to seek for the elective posts. And this is what I remember somebody saying the other day, and I don't know why they made this statement, albeit the fact that they were so right. They said, Kenya, we may not, or Wanjiku for this matter, may not get the leader that she wants. She may get the leader that she deserves. And, you know, for somebody to say something like that, just that took me back, and I was wondering, can we not think? And when somebody is trying to put us into a boardroom and create what I would call political intolerance, can we, as Wanjiku, representing Wanjiku, can we not walk away? Must we be shown that the only direction for us to remain, you know, in disunity or not in harmony is when the politicians will get their way? You know, Wahiga, I pray that this day will come when we will make a choice informed on leadership. You see, we keep mentioning, you know, the ironies to serve, and that's why you even hear politicians, half of them are saying, and I know this is a different topic, probably we may get to it, when somebody comes and say we are going to cut your salary, they are hitting the roof, mainly because they have not understood the servitude, which is the quality of real leadership. You know, we've been talking about, you know, some of these politicians who are saying, albeit the fact that I'm old, albeit the fact that people are not electing me this time, I'll still go as an independent candidate. Nothing wrong with going as an independent candidate, but what they've forgotten is the leadership mantle. And at the end of the day, people will not count how long you are in that seat. They'll count what credible institution did you bring? What kind of accountability did we measure you in?
We'll need to put this topic to rest, but before we do, Danstan, on another, within the same topic but still on a different note, one of the key features of this year's election, or the run-up to it, has been the size of crowds, both for Jubilee and NASA, no matter where they go. But after what we saw yesterday, are crowds a sure sign of votes? Or are crowds just a sign that people are curious? They just want to see what you're all about.
Well, before I return to that, I will only raise one issue.
Okay.
Let us interrogate the voter mobilization during registration. Did Uhuru Kenyatta go to mobilize people to register in Kisumu? Did Raila Odinga go to Kiambu to mobilize? So, which voters are they going to look from that area? So that is, mobilization and registration of voter was purely ethnic. So you cannot go hunting what you did not register. So that is how the politicians are thinking. Number two, let us also interrogate the second phase. I say that the politicians have realized the mistake that they did to allow the voter to think. Because any time the voter is allowed to think, the loser and the casualty is a politician.
They have no control over that.
So they are very, very alert. They do not, both formations don't want anybody to think. Number three, look at these people, NASA and Jubilee. All of them are incarnates of Kanu. Do you remember the zoning? Vidole mbili na kidole kimoja. You could not put two fingers in a kuru. The late teach. That is the politics of winning an election. So in the way the politician mind thinks, the problem is not with the politician. The problem is with the Kenyans. Look at your Facebook account. Today, whatever the tribe tells you, which side, whether it's a professional, they will never see anything wrong that Jubilee does.
But Danstan, let me ask you. So you are telling me that in observing the whole process in the run-up to the election, you have not seen any, even if they are isolated events that show that some Kenyans are changing, that some Kenyans are seeing things differently? Are you saying
I
the
agree
word that nothing has changed in this country?
After the voter registration, Kenyans started thinking and changing, reading the manifesto. The politicians have realized this is fatal. So they have now gone back to their ethnic cocoon to suppress that thinking. And I'm telling you, within a week, that argument of being fair, critical, objective is going to be washed out, and people will be trooping to the polling booth based on their tribes and based on those issues. You raised another question that I wanted to deal with.
Okay, briefly.
The crowds. This is also a mistake the politicians have realized. One, Uhuru Kenyatta lands in Kisumu, and the crowds are there. Raila Odinga arrives in Kiambu, the crowds are there. The political perception is that that man has been accepted here. So now, whether the crowds are paid, and let me tell you, some of those crowds are the same people, and I'm telling you, there are companies of mobilization, people paid to transport crowd, so that even if Raila Odinga goes to Gatundu at Ishawel, the crowds will be as huge as Uhuru Kenyatta's. The same way. So the question that is there, are these crowds for hire? I am of the view those crowds are for hire. Because anyway, nowadays the economy is poor. If somebody gives you 500 shillings, even me, if I'm paid very well to attend a rally of an opposite of a guy I don't believe in, but I go home with the unga, why will I not attend?
I don't want to think about what very well for you would look like. we take another short break now. When we put this topic to rest, when we come back, we'll be talking about IBC preparedness, also live in different locations around the country. You are watching Citizen Extra live on Citizen TV. Keep it right here.